picture of the driveway and the side of the building closest to Klein's Lane. The lower left is the hallway leading into the area where the library would be located. The lower right is a photograph of what one of the offices looks like. This slide shows some of the larger open areas in the building that are currently available. The upper left picture is in the upstairs. It's a large open space in the upstairs of the center part of the building. The upper right photo would be an entire section of the building is almost open, almost completely open. There's a couple offices in and around that area. The lower left photograph is a picture of a conference room that's in the upstairs. The lower right is an entirely separate section than the upper right photo. And you'll see the very large open areas that they have there. In this photo, again, the upper left is another large office. The upper right is another office. They really like their colors, that's for sure. The lower left is a picture basically of what the facade of the building looks like from the driveway, and the lower right is the hallway that's in the far wing closest to Klein's. I mean, I have, determining in a presentation like this how many photos do you put in. We have 400 photographs if you really wanted to go through. I think you get the gist of what it looks like. So what's the inside of 151 East Minor? None of you have been in that I'm aware of. I mean, that's not something that we toured. That was something at the last second they said, hey, we'll throw this in with the price. So I have a slide here. It's only one slide, I think, but it incorporates what most of the inside of the building looks like. And they marketed it as it was converted to offices when we toured it. It may have been converted to offices at one time if somebody was living there. So the upper left it actually comes up pretty clear on here. The upper left is a picture of what would be the living room if you go through the front door, and then you'd walk right into the kitchen. If you return right from the kitchen, well, on the other side of the kitchen there's a little back, like a back porch. If you return right, there's a bathroom on the left, and it looks like two pretty sizable bedrooms. So you see the bathroom on the left. That's that far right, upper right picture. The middle upper picture is one of the bedrooms. The picture in the center and the bottom is a photograph of the basement. They do have a bathroom facility in the basement, and it looks like a little bit of a mud room. It's not a completely finished basement, but it's dry. And being right near that creek, you would have thought that you would have seen some kind of water. It was dry. And then the bottom right photo is I think the second bedroom in the downstairs. In the upstairs, it's like a typical Cape Cod. You go in the upstairs. There's usually only one or two rooms in the upstairs. So you would go upstairs. To the right of the upstairs is it could be a bedroom with this a slanted roof. To the left, it's pretty identical to it. So it's about a 1,200. I think it's like a 1,200 and some square foot house. I think is what the paperwork shows. All right, so just real brief. I mean, we're just going to real briefly show you. This is just one set of the possible plans. I mean, the architects had given us numerous things to look at, and even those wouldn't be anywhere close to final. But I wanted to throw this up there so that people could see what the breakdown may or may not look like. What may or may not be put there. But I think it was at least worth putting something up here so that way you could see. I'm hoping you can see it from back there. This concept, and again, we're not set on anything. If you were to buy it, there'd be obviously a lot of discussions and decision making. But in this concept, the police station would be in the side closest to Klein's Lane. You'd have to put, the garage and the sally port in addition to it. The town hall portion would be in the main central part. Council chambers would be, so this would be the police station here, town hall offices, probably the council chambers and some billing, maybe the tax collector, things like that. And then fire and ambulance would be the green and the blue. The open white sections, they propose that that's not space that we would occupy. So in this part, they're looking at like 5,600 square feet. By the way, the school right now is in the gray. Okay, that's where they're located right now. But this concept looks at an additional 5,600 feet or so, probably more or less, at the very end near the school, that could be leasable, as well as the entire upstairs, which is about 7,600 square feet, could also be leasable space if that's what you chose to do. So that's pushing 13,000 square feet in this concept. I mean, there's other concepts that they've made. I mean, that's their job. That's what they do. But we wanted to at least throw one of them up there for you, so that way you could see some of the work that the architects have looked at as to whether or not could these garages be built in this space? B, what would it look like? C, how would putting all of our facilities in there, if that's what you did, look? Now, you could say, hey, we're moving everybody but this one, or we're not moving any of them. I mean, that's all for further discussion sometime down the road if you chose to purchase the building. So our next steps. We're going to have some public input and discussion. So we're going to ask that you ask your questions, you raise your concerns at the conclusion of the presentation. Then we want you to have your discussion, if you need any further discussion as council members. And then we're going to ask you to vote. So what happens if council votes no? No harm, no foul. We continue to operate the same way we have previously. We'll continue the building improvement plan in each of the buildings to maximize the space we're in. The only money that we spent was the money that we spent on our appraisers and our architects. So that we're in a non-binding agreement right now. So it's not like we have a down payment that we would lose. Okay, but that would be the only money that you would really have invested if you were to vote no today. If council votes yes, we would ask that you authorize the solicitor to finish the purchase agreement and authorize the council president to sign that purchase agreement. They have given us 120 days from the signing of the purchase agreement to close. So we would need to complete any additional due diligence, secure financing, obtain DCED approvals, and complete the purchase process. During that time, we would propose that we start creating a task force of individuals, including department managers, council members, members of the public, to create and complete the plan for the building and the work, how that would get done, and design it. After the closing, we complete the architectural and engineering design work and begin construction for phase 1. We would also sit down with the school and discuss the lease terms and the possible extension after we would close on the building. Obviously, there's no sense of doing that before that. So, but we would, under our plan, we would be interested in continuing that relationship at this point. All right. So in conclusion, I don't pretend to have all the answers. I don't pretend to know every detail. Do I feel that we've done our due diligence? Yes, I do. Do I think the place is full of potential? It could be a great long-term asset for governmental operations? Yeah, I do. Are there disadvantages to making the purchase? Absolutely. Is it going to cost money and need a well-laid plan? Yes. So it's tough. That's my presentation, Madam President.
Thank you very much. All right, before we have our discussion, let's hear from the public. Can I just see a show of hands, how many intend to speak this evening? Okay, all right. Whoever wants to go first, come on up to the podium right there. Shane, is there a sign-in sheet there?
Yes, I believe there is.
Okay. If you could just sign in and state your name and address for the record, and give us your personal appeal.
Good evening. My name is Mark Heimbach, 315 West Burgery, Mass. I want to thank you for this opportunity to digest or get this information. I want to thank the staff and the council for the diligence that was done to date and all the professional help that was here. Obviously, this is a huge decision. I mean, I couldn't get all the facts and figures, although I did note this was posted, so I could have looked at it a little bit in advance. I did once go through it, but I mean, you know, some back of the envelope numbers, it's, you could spend your 600 grand or your 1.2 million to this facility and versus the 6 million that you'll be spending to purchase this new facility. And, you know, there's some of the, obviously that's some of the decisions you're going to have to make. One question I did have that I didn't note that was addressed was, what's the current, the tax base? I'm a little concerned with the loss of tax base on this 33 East Minor building versus, I mean, any idea what they're paying in taxes versus what percentage of your tax base that is right now? And thus, all that property would be off the tax base for potentially up to 10 years before you sell this other property. So that's one thing I'm a little concerned, because I feel that would directly potentially affect our residents' taxes, because if you lose tax base, you've got to make that up somehow.
No, and that's a very good question. Mr. Geiger did provide that information to us.
I provided this previously, I don't remember it all.
Oh, sure, I understand that.
I will try to find it here as we're talking.
Ray, while you're looking, I read the lease, and it's almost $1 million of tax on that, on those tracks. And the school is paying 20% of that. That is the current arrangement.
We don't get anywhere close to $1 million.
That would be
yeah.
school
All of them.
district, county, and borough. Is that what you
Correct.
meant by that?
No, well,
Mr. Pitt?
that is you asked the tax.
Yeah.
The-
So that would be off the
school
school,
tax
that'd be
is
off the school
probably-
districts, that would be off the school district tax base, that would be off the county, it'd be off, obviously off the borough tax
The
base.
borough's the smallest part, that's right.
Up, yeah,
But
still
the-
sizable though.
I have the number.
Okay.
I have the number. The current millage of
We
the
have-
borough is 20,000, creates a tax bill of $20,785.17. And it's not $1 million in total taxes, it's $104,560.25, which would include, of course, the county's $15,522, and the school district's $68,200.
Yeah, Ray, I'd have to check it again, because I read the lease, and you could very well be right. I was looking at all the parcels. I can give you the exact thing, because I looked at the lease.
And we've had both the appraiser and our real estate agent look at those. Those numbers that Mr. Geiger had given us were accurate.
I was going to say, can you repeat the numbers?
I'd be happy to. The current tax bill The
Wes.
village for the borough is
in your original
$5.075, and that generates a tax bill of $20,785.17. The school is 16.6649 mils, and that's $68,252.76. The county is 3.79 mils, and that's $15,522.32. And the sum of that is $104,560.25. Now, please recognize that that is the primary property and does not include the parking lot and the extra house that we talked about, which would be relatively nominal additions to that.
Mr. Leidenberg?
Yeah, I just want to point out, because I don't know if everyone heard Shane say it, you said it, but I don't know if everyone caught it. The current school lease, they are paying their part of the building's property taxes, the school themselves. The borough is not going to be losing that. Well, they will when, actually they will, but, correct?
Yeah,
But they're currently paying, the school is currently paying that tax.
We have our legal counsel. He would need to look at whether or not you can still assess that part of the building for tax collection.
The answer is they are. And I can give you a rough number on this one. I wrote this one down. The reason I don't have it with me is I promised that I would keep the lease. It was given to me confidentially, and I couldn't reveal it until after you decide what you're doing. But it's about $1,532 a month that they're paying on the tax. So you can multiply that by 12, and that's 20%, and hopefully that comes out to what Ray said, which is the 104.
Yeah, round numbers, that would be correct. And it also makes sense in terms of physicality. I believe the square footage that they occupy is approximately 20%.
Yes. Well, I checked all the square footage on the lease and everything. I looked at that. Yeah, I might have misspoke. I thought the millage, is it the appraised value or something at the 1 million? I thought it was, there was a number of 954,000 in the lease. I'll have to look at that again.
That's,
Let me add a supplemental.
It has nothing to do with the tax.
Let me add a supplemental piece of information that you may find interesting, not valuable, at least interesting. The county, who, as you know, did a countywide reassessment of property in 2012, values the building at $4,095,600.
Okay, well, that sounded like that generated some good discussion. Appreciate the information. Of course, you noted some of the other concerns. I think the railroad access is a major concern. I live, pretty close to Central Fire Station. I can walk downtown. I can walk to the Borough Hall. Not that I'm a regular visitor here. Used to be years ago, but not any longer. You do a great job, so I don't need to come here all the time. So, the other concern, I don't know. There was an article in today's paper about government funding of pensions. I don't know where we stand here. That's obviously a concern. The other one more so that I think, I don't know that you want to be in the business of being a landlord. That's just my personal opinion. You'd need some type of administration to do that, and that's additional expense that you have to be considered. Just a suggestion: stay downtown, sell those parcels that you mentioned might be valuable. Use that money to improve your facilities here. Obviously, it's an old building. I understand the concerns, but I don't know. I just think it has a lot of character in the downtowns. It's kind of nice having it here. So I think that's where I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. Kent Fitzgerald, 611 Iroquois Street. And thank you for this opportunity to learn more about this project. I have a lot of thoughts, comments, questions. I will have to keep it to 5 minutes. My first question is whether this is part of a master plan for the borough, whether there was a needs analysis that went into this, whether other real estate sites were considered. There's a lot of vacant industrial and commercial real estate in the Lehigh Valley, much of it in the borough, and I'm just considering the timing of this. I'm wondering, was this a deliberative process, or was it see the property, think it might be neat to have it, have to act on it rapidly? I'm concerned about the 30-day deadline. I mean, the exploding offer is the oldest trick in the book in real estate, and if they'll sell it for $2.95 million on January 19th, I bet they'll sell it for $2.95 million next summer. Does anyone know how long that property's been vacant?
I don't know how long it's been.
We know that the property didn't go up on the real estate market until August.
Okay.
That's what we do know.
Okay.
I think it's been more than a few years, I think, that they've
Okay.
actually operated in there.
So it's vacant for years, it's not going to disappear. I'm a little concerned with the timing of public notification 10 days ago, one public meeting, and a decision tonight. That's moving very quickly. I note it took 10 months and 3 council meetings to approve Funk Brewing Company for a zoning variance. So a $3 million decision in this time period is very quick.
Mr. Leibenberg, you want to make a
Yeah,
comment?
I just
or
want
something?
to address the one issue, and I don't know if, Shane, if you're able to make it public, but there were offers on that building since we have that 30-day process, and we know that some of those offers were several $100,000 more, correct, than what we locked in.
We rarely we can't publicly comment on that. Now, obviously, that's their business. What we have inside information on is
But we can say there were other offers, though.
there are. But I think Mr. Geiger has a response.
I'm interested in making a response, and please don't take it the wrong way. I do understand what you're talking about with exploding offers. I do understand that it appears to you to be a relatively short time frame since August. However, I need to answer your question by giving you a most recent example with some specificity. You may have read that the Lehigh County Community College in the Morning Call has missed out on an opportunity to buy a property that they were very much interested in. And they lost the opportunity because they needed to get various school district approvals. I don't know if you read that story or not. But I can tell you with specificity that they offered more than what was paid by somebody who bought it out from under them with a cash settlement offered within 30 days. So you don't think that because it's a big building and an expensive building that there aren't other buyers, and there aren't other buyers that might pay more, because it does happen. And that's a very recent, notorious example. They're very disappointed that they missed it.
Okay, I appreciate that response, and I do believe you. Some of my other concerns, the costs for, estimated costs for construction. I was trying to jot down numbers as they went by rather quickly. Just looking at 400,000 plus 300,000 for the police portion of the project.
Correct.
Then I won't repeat the numbers. They struck me as very small numbers. The police station that is apparently being outgrown cost $2.15 million in 2006. That's $2.5 million in current dollars. So to me, thinking that that building can be replaced for a much smaller figure, I'm just not sure about how that works.
Yeah,
Not building from scratch.
because the brick and mortar's already there,
Okay.
is why the cost would be, under $2.5 million, because building's already there.
Okay.
The construction part of it, other than the remodeling, which, would be some.
Yeah.
But the brick and mortar part that would cost would be the cost of building the garage again.
Okay.
That's where the bulk of the
And-
cost would be, but the reason it's nowhere close to, the estimate from the architect who, we would trust their estimate since they are architects. and do this for a living, but, I would trust that their figure's accurate.
Okay. Does that include the radio tower?
The radio tower could stay.
Well,
Yeah,
okay,
you can
so-
put that right into the deed of a sale.
Okay. Okay, well, I'm not accusing anyone of underestimating, but the police station did go over the initially
Well, absolutely,
estimated
and that's
budget.
why
and-
we
and if-
identified that right up front in the presentation. We knew
You know,
that was.
if
that's
it's
an
done
issue.
ahead of schedule and under budget, thank you for making that happen, but things tend to be more expensive than we hope. Laura McCungy just built a new fire station. That was $2.4 million, and that's a satellite station. That's not replacing their existing station. So I was surprised to see numbers under millions of dollars for major phases of this project. If it can be done, that's wonderful.
Well, and again, it's because the brick and mortar of the office space is already there.
Yeah.
The major cost would be the addition of the garage, and I think we showed like $900,000 in the presentation for the brick and mortar part of building their garages. So I mean that is a lot of money, but the brick and mortar of the building's already there, so you can't really compare 2.5 to our number. If we were building a new building, then you could say, why is it only $1 million versus 2.5 over there? But that's why some of that cost is under what you would see a new construction.
And were there numbers in there for routine maintenance and repairs to the building? Portions of the Rodale property are over 50 years old. So it presumably will need roofs and windows, and was all of that included in the estimate?
All the
to-
retrofitting was
Okay.
factored into their estimates. Obviously, routine maintenance, just like we didn't factor in routine maintenance to what we spent here, we didn't factor routine maintenance into what we would spend there. I mean, we've looked at that, but we didn't factor that in on either side. We were looking at how do you retrofit that just to get in there? What it costs to clean the carpet every day or janitorial work, that wasn't part of what we
Okay.
looked at.
Okay, how am I doing in my 5 minutes?
You got 30 seconds.
Okay. Where to start? Okay, last question. Some of the grant funding that you mentioned that could contribute to the renovation of the new building, how much of that would be applicable to enhancing the current buildings?
The RCAP money would not be.
Okay.
The environmental grants could be. Yeah, the environmental grants could be.
Could I request to extend?
If a member of council would make that motion. Motion by Mr. Labenberg, second by Mr. Barrett. Discussion?
He's asking good questions, so let him go.
All those in favor? We have 7 ayes. You have 5 more minutes.
Okay, thank you. And I apologize for the disorganized manner of this presentation, but a lot of information
No,
to process
that's fine.
in one evening. Let me disclaim, I am a volunteer member of the Emmaus Fire Department. My comments here do not represent the fire department and are strictly personal, but I share some of the concerns about relocating emergency services to this location. The central fire station was built in 1980 as a central location with proximity to the population centers, the schools, and so on. It has access north, south, east, and west. And so on. It's a great location for a fire and ambulance station. The Minor Street location, as you've identified, has problems with access. When the trains are coming through, there's only one way in or out of there. And you did look at the call density. I did a little Google Maps research myself, and by my calculations, response time to Ridge Manor and East Penn Place will go up about a minute. Okay. That's a minute, but that's a 50% increase. We've been very fortunate in the borough to enjoy 2-minute response times for many of our emergency services. So increasing that is a concern of mine. Parts of the borough, will be quite difficult to reach. I was looking at Harrison Street and State Street. That's a very popular location for motor vehicle accidents and spills. Most recent one was yesterday morning. And to get to that, if the train is crossing, involves going almost a mile in the opposite direction to cross the tracks at 4th Street and then double back. So I would encourage the borough to seriously consider making necessary improvements to the existing central station. I do realize that privacy and HIPAA are very important concerns. However, the medical world is moving towards electronic medical records. So using rooms for storing paper and so on is something that will hopefully be phasing out shortly, and teleconferencing is a great thing. So devoting long-term space to record storage seems like something that probably shouldn't be a priority if we're talking about the next 20 to 30 to 100 years. So, and as for centralization, the new borough complex would certainly be central unto itself, but as you noted, it's less central to the heart of the borough, the Triangle, Main Street, the population center, and so on. I like the idea of going down there, dropping off my yard waste, paying my water bill, and bailing out Cousin Eddie, all in one stop. But with regard to delivery of services, it just strikes me as a somewhat marginal location. Wilderness to the east, train tracks to the west, and so on. I should probably stop talking at this point. So, thanks for listening.
Thank you.
I encourage you to give this important decision as much consideration and deliberation as it takes.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. I'm Anthony Groller. I live on 1302 South 10th Street in Mass. I've been listening to everything that's going on here, and I'm not in favor or against buying the Rodale building. I have a few questions to ask here. Maybe somebody can answer them. If we're going to move all of these different buildings, would the total cost run around $6,000 to move all of these buildings?
I wish it was 6,000, Tony. I wish it was 6,000. It's
I mean, 6 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, 6 million.
Yeah.
Is that what it would cost?
It would be close, yeah, it'd be
Okay.
right around there.
Now, if we buy this new building, say, close to $3 million, what about the upgrade? Would that run around 3 million?
Yeah.
3 million? And that total, there's another one that would be 905,000 other things in there. Would that be the remodel or whatever? it
No,
would
no,
be?
no, the upgrades, all that would be that other half, Tony. That'd be part of that three.
So
3
the
million.
total would be about $5,500,000 total?
Yeah.
Okay. So what savings do we have in between those two numbers?
We've
Do
shown
you have an idea?
We've shown you the presentation. I don't know. You saw the numbers.
So, and my other concern is, where it is. We all know it's on that side of the railroad. Did anybody ever think of our fire department, if we had the hook and ladder, if we had to go on Minor Street? How are we going to make that turn up at Minor Street? And then you go all the way down, the 3rd Street or the 4th Street? it's with the radio speed that turns fire truck? You know the hook and ladder needs a big radius to go around. And then here, just suppose, we have a fire and we have the police department. Davey, you're involved in that. And then we have the Assemblance Corps. Suppose all three of these have to go out at one time. That means they all have to go on Minor Street. And I have a concern with that. About things, like I said, I'm not against buying this building. Maybe it's a good idea that we modernize everything together, but I have a concern with a lot of this, and I think council should look into this, see if it's feasible to spend all that money, or whatever. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Next. Oh.
Okay, it's a lot more fun on this side. Good evening. Mike Waddell, 976 North 7th Street Circle. Good evening, Madam President, Council, Attorney Dimick, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Pepe, good evening. Good to see you. First of all, thank you for the presentation this evening. I have the greatest respect for Mr. Pepe, a gentleman who goes out and takes the time to get an MBA. I respect his opinion to do something like this. I have three questions, I guess, or three things to bring up. And let me do all three first, and then I'll just throw it out there. First of all, my recollection is, and you know my recollections are sometimes a little hazy. Many years ago, I have a recollection that there was a discussion about building on the property where we have Central Station. And as we talk now, and as Mr. Grolier brought up, $5 to $6 million perhaps, was there a consideration of saving Central Station and building on the property over the ball field, the weight room, the playground in that area, which we do own? What would $5 to $6 million build us on that site rather than going down here? It would keep us central. It also keeps Central Station. It would certainly could be renovated as part of that cost and so on. Secondly, I didn't see the appraised values of Borough Hall, of Police Station, and Central Station. I was just curious about that. I saw it was a little over $1 million for all three, which leads into the third point, and that was one of the concerns, and I heard it here in the audience, was, well, if we go into the Rodale building, we give up that tax revenue. So a question I would have is, what's the estimated tax revenue of selling off Borough Hall, selling off Central Station, and selling the police station? Is that somewhat of a wash with the tax revenue between our three entities, or say the borough three entities, and the Rodale facility? I think that's a concern the community has, is we're giving up a big building there with that tax revenue. So those are my three questions.
Dr. Waddell, I'll answer a couple of the questions, and then when you talk about tax revenue, we'll let the person that's the professional answer that question. Okay. First of all, so you asked about, did we consider building onto Central Station? We have not had that discussion. I mean, obviously, baseball field there, there's a park there. We did not talk about that. Is that a conversation that council could obviously have? Sure. During my tenure here, we haven't had that conversation. Okay. Maybe someone in council was part of a conversation there before, but I can tell you that we haven't had that in recent
My thinking is that was 15, 20 years ago, and I think there was a bit of an uproar and a concern, but I may be making that up. I'm not sure. But I think there was. But it's a nice parcel, and certainly by saving Central Station, moving back over the land there with $5 or $6 million is a possibility.
I'd just like to address that. We would be building from scratch, and you saw the numbers.
Correct.
For what it would be costing if you build from the ground up and having total. Plus, you would not have any revenue generated from the seventh generation school. So right off the bat, you're paying for all that with no other revenue coming in other than selling off your buildings. So, and then you're losing a ball field, which is very scarce in the borough.
Very much so. Thank you.
In regards to the appraisals of each building, so we talked about how to handle that, because if council does vote yes, what we don't want to do is tell somebody what the building's worth, so that's the
I
price
sort of
tag
thought that's what
that-
the answer I was going to get, Mr. Pepe. Yeah. But the aggregate was a little over $1 million
Well,
for all
what
the
we- What we
properties.
know is that the lowball number, the very bottom number for all of them combined is around 1.2.
Okay,
It's
fair
somewhere
enough.
between 1.2 and 1.8 is what Mr. Geiger had felt that the number would be. Now, I'll let him answer, he probably should have answered that question anyway, but I'll let him answer about the tax information.
Yeah, just to piggyback on what he said, we didn't want to prejudice the.
No, I understand it.
properties. But with regard to the tax, if you just use roughly $1 million and
For the three.
for the three, you're only talking about, you're only talking about $5,000 in additional revenue for the borough.
Okay.
Borough. But bear in mind, you don't know what a future user does with these buildings in terms of adaptive reuse. They may buy it for $1, but they may spend $1.50 on it and it becomes worth $2. So, the
I understand.
revenue could
I understand.
potentially be greater than these.
Okay, thank you. And again, thank you to council for considering this. I've always been an advocate for those of you representing us thinking 10, 15, 20 years, 100 years into the future, and I appreciate you doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for this presentation. It's excellent that way. It's nice to get information so that you can base something on it. I would have preferred that we'd have got it a little sooner, or that it would have been put up on the website the day that it was announced. I came Monday to the meeting, and at the last minute, Brent happened to make mention that, oh, shouldn't we announce a special meeting coming up? And then he told us the rest, but failed to mention what it was about. We come to these meetings to find out the information. You're going to give it to the newspapers anyway, which you did. You could easily said it's going to be about trying to buy Rodale Building for potential new offices and everything that night. That'd be good to do. And then you could have had the presentation up on your site, so people could have gone there and seen exactly what was going on, exactly what was here. Like the gentleman said, it's a little difficult to figure things out in 20 minutes. I thank you for doing the presentation. It was very good. And my concerns, some of my ideas and all.
Can you state your name and address, please?
John Donchis, Emmaus, 559 Minor. Sorry. The 7 Gen is down there, and that is a concern, I think, too. Been down there a couple times. We walk around. There's buses, parents, general public, everything coming around at the same time for short periods of time, but throughout the day. I have videos of it. It's chaos sometimes. And they did say that they do drop the middle school children off on site. They have the bus actually go around, drive on the property, and drop the children off there because there's no crossing guards. And instead of dropping them off at the main building and having the children walk across the street, they decided it was safer just to drop them off behind. So now they would have that besides the fire ambulance and police to contend with. And I'm not sure how much room there is to get a bus around to the back there to drop the children off, or how that could be worked out. But it's something to consider. That's being done now. A lot of the stuff was mentioned here before, tight turns at 4th and Minor to go across the bridge. And I'm thankful that some of the actual people that are on the ambulance, fire, whoever came to speak. That's what we need too. We need to hear their concerns. I talked with some of the fire and ambulance people, and they had the same concerns. There's a lot of stuff going on at once down there, potential for problems. All you need is one suit, and that could wipe out everything. Serious thing to consider. As far as the building, it might be a good idea. I don't have actually a particular problem with purchasing the building and moving offices and things down there. But the services, as far as the fire, ambulance, police, are more centrally located now. The amount of monies that you'd put in to upgrade them, you could still do that. And you'd save, if you were purchasing the building down there, some of the positives that way. You could eliminate the upgrade for here, but still do the other ones, and still save an additional almost $1 million off of that $6 million that it would cost. I don't know if it's the best thing to have the town as a rental business. I know Brian had made mention once that you didn't really want to rent spaces and things and get into that. That's something to consider. You'd be getting into that. It's nice having the school down there, and as far as rentals, that's a government entity. We pay our taxes, so that'd be like having our taxes come back to us to help us purchase that building. You could maybe get the post office in there. That's a government entity, and they pay rent. Things like that. I'd heard maybe even magistrates, whatever. But there's the crossover. If the school moves out and things happen and you get rentals by private concerns, now you're taking it away from private, entities that do rent. Just like the Rishel new furniture factory that was redone. They have offices there. That's a private concern. And if you're taking space, rental space from them because the school moved out and now we need to rent that space to make our income. That's competition, and we did use grant money, $500,000, or tax money to even help that happen. So, those are the things with using tax monies to do private enterprise stuff. You're creating competitions. This would be another concern that I'd have that way. The MUSH grants, the gentleman made mention about that. You could use them here to do the windows and air conditioning possibly. And that's really it. Those are the things that I thought that, are concerns. Competition with private and government monies. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Before I sign in, I'd ask if you'd give me permission to speak on behalf of my son, who is a borough resident and was unable to attend tonight. I am not a borough resident myself.
That's fine. Just state your
Okay.
name and state your son's name and his address so
My
we know.
name is Frank Cookless. My son's name is Andrew Cookless, 623 Spruce Street, Emmaus. In addition to the previously expressed concerns, which I'm pretty much in agreement with, I'd like to also make mention of the fact that utility and maintenance costs, while owning both the new and the old buildings, could have the potential being crippling. There was one mention made that the transition fully into the new building could take as long as 10 years for all the departments. Are you prepared to triple your square footage of maintenance and utilities for as long as a 10-year period? That's a very significant cost. A second thing that was brought up that seems very puzzling is the availability of borough employees to do, and I'll quote Mr. Pepe on this, most of the work and a bulk of the work. Do you have borough employees right now that are sitting around doing nothing, that are available to do major construction work in a timely basis? I would think not. Was there, did anybody take a good, solid look at the potential of expanding at this location instead? It was done once with the police department. It's not impossible to do it again. Of course, it involves some demolition, but you have the court here already. If tonight you were proposing to buy the Rodale building that is directly across the street from the existing firehouse, I think you'd have a lot more support than for the building you're talking about. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Liebert?
I would just like to say that we did discuss what it would cost to expand here and even maybe close the alley down and connect the buildings here. Once again, you're looking at adding millions of dollars, and the only way you could come up with that money is borrowing, and you're looking at increasing taxes to cover those expenses, and that's not something we're interested in doing.
Does anybody have any answer for the availability of borough employees
Yeah,
to
so-
do this
so-
type of work?
So they do it now. Our employees did this roof. They did the full roof.
Full roof?
They've been
Stairway?
doing all the remodeling here.
Stairway?
They did the steps out front. They're doing all the remodeling work in this building. They do this kind of work. Now,
They would have to continue to do this kind of work in addition.
agreed.
To a lot
but
more
they would
work.
still be doing this kind of work, one way or another. Like, if you don't buy the Rodale building, these buildings still need addressed. To save money, the financial plan would be, you still have our employees do the work. Why? Because there's about a 40% difference in cost of our employees doing the work versus you paying somebody else on a state contract, or on a governmental contract to do the work. I mean, that's fact. It's about 40% more for you to contract it out than to do it in-house. So our employees would still continue to do the bulk of this work. I mean, there's work they can't do. They can't pick up, a 5-ton HVAC system and install that. That's not what they do for a living. But basic construction type of work, they do it now. I mean, that's part of what they do. So, in that sense, they do it. Now, you're talking about a much larger scale project over there, and that's agreed. I mean, that's, you can't downscale that. But they do almost all of our current construction work. I mean, they run electric, they do the masonry, they do it all.
Mr.
I
Liebert?
just want to throw out there, they also retrofitted all the library lights, and they did that in under a week, I believe, saving us a lot of money.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. Ted Yobst, 413 South Fifth Street. Reason I'm here is really just to listen and try and understand the logic and the rationale to the basically economic argument. I've lived in this borough a long time. I have some sentimental feelings, but that's not what this is about. It's really about the economics to the taxpayers of the borough. Again, I could only listen and look at the slides. Couldn't really crunch numbers, but there were some representations that I really have to challenge. First and foremost, the financing for the purchase. I saw a slide up there where I believe you talked about financing the purchase at about $150,000 to $160,000 a year was the debt service for purchasing the land
On 2%, correct.
on a $3 million purchase
Yes.
price roughly.
On 3.29%, I think it was right around 167, 170, somewhere in there.
So how are you financing the remaining 3 million improvement numbers?
As we discussed, first of all, if we do the bulk of the work, it would be about 2.5. The proposal was that you sell a building, you take that money, and you put it towards the project, okay? So if you were to sell this building, and I don't even want to say what the number would be, but if you were to sell this building, you would take that and use that towards the construction of the next phase, is how we have it planned out. In the meantime, you apply for grants for assistance for other parts of the project.
Okay.
But the idea would be, and the only way that it would actually feasibly work is that you would do it in phases. You'd have to sell a building to fund paying for the next phase of the project. Is the only feasible financial way that it would work.
Okay, so there's some assumptions on the value of the property here and the reuse of the property here. Big assumptions.
Might I state, we went very conservative on the numbers.
And appraisals
On
not
purpose,
subjects.
on purpose. We went very conservative.
Okay. One of the other things, and this is just appreciating the tax savings year after year, but now they come all at once. So in the costs associated with the existing facilities, while they were represented as capital improvements, much if not all of those line item numbers were nothing but more than deferred maintenance, year after year after year. Routine increases in budgets or budgeting for required maintenance, life cycle maintenance, really should be considered by this council, not only now, but in the future. I didn't see any life cycle budget in your numbers for the proposed new facility. So how do those parlay into what's being proposed? It's just a rhetorical question. I'm not expecting an answer. The other question I have is on the slide, I believe I saw there's 3 years remaining on the 7 generations lease term with 2 5-year options. It appeared to me, in terms of balancing the budget and justifying their income, that you relied heavily on their $160,000 to $170,000 rent to offset the debt service. What is their termination clause? Are they on the hook for those remaining 3 years, or can they get out before the 3 years are up?
We actually can't discuss the lease in terms of the lease. It's illegal. That's that guy over there.
So I understand that. I didn't expect you to be able to answer it. However, huge question. If they have the right to cancel their lease before the end of that term, certainly you can't count on that as income.
Can you speak to that generally? I'd like to speak to that question generally. It's a good question. I am not privy to the private lease in this particular sense, but I am privy to a variety of charter school leases throughout the county. And typically, I would say that they are on the hook to the end of 3 years, and the additional 2 5-year renewal terms are likely at their option. So you have for 3 years for sure, but when you pick up the other 5, not more. Now, I'm speaking typically.
Sure.
I don't know the terms of this particular case.
Right.
Typically, that's
Right. So to that end, I would ask you to take that into your consideration as it relates to offsetting debt. And then lastly, this is really just about need. You know, I can't begin to understand how the police department functions and what their true needs are. But I do struggle with a building that's essentially 8 years old that we're saying is undersized and antiquated. And we need more space. Several of the council members here on council today were part of that decision to build that building. And I challenge you as to having foresight and not having the proper foresight, and now potentially the borough is at risk for additional debt. As far as the Borough Hall is concerned, this, although old and needing infrastructure improvements, I will tell you that as you look at the office space, it's extremely generous for the number of employees that are here. A typical office that I've worked in over my career, as an employee, I might get an 8x8 cubicle, I might get a 10x10 space. I can tell you, without getting into specific personnel, their spaces are extravagant in terms of space. Yes, it's old. The meeting room, other than tonight and what I'll say controversial issues, is more than large enough to accommodate the general public. The parking spaces, again, within a block of here, there's more than enough spaces as you go up and down the street on the parking spaces the borough owns. I was one of the last ones